grab your coffee and get cozy because you are listening to Fika with Vicky, live from home.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fika with our returning guest, author Rachel S. Roberts, and me, your host, Vicky Benison. Now, I think in honor of Rachel's return and her wolf tendencies, we should reunite this Fika pack with a howl. So what do you say? 1, 2, 3. That sounded pretty good. I need practice. You're much better at it, Rachel. So most of you will remember that last time Rachel came, our intention was to discuss both Wolf and Lupa. But we got carried away with Wolf and ran out of time, and Lupa had to wait. And I'm actually glad that happened, because not only does it give me the opportunity to visit with Rachel again, but Lupa is the perfect example of a book. She lost her place. Of a book that speaks to you differently with each reading and the time at which you read it. Having originally read Lupa last autumn, I feel like its words and insightfulness reached even further into myself, the world, and the need for truth when I reread it in preparation for this episode. Rachel writes with so much passion and confidence in the subject that you immediately want to take action, which means I'm ready to get this show started. Welcome to Fika, Rachel.
Thank you so much. And your howling was great.
Thank you. I will try it more often. You know, I need to get more. The neighbors in suburbia sort of look at you funny. But maybe I should just ask them to join.
Yeah, it's because they want to join in. They're just jealous because they can feel that howl inside.
That's it. Hi, Heidi, Dave, and Erie Lake. Thank you for joining us. So before we get started, not everybody knows Lupa's story. Could you just give us a brief synopsis of her importance and why you wrote the book?
Of course. So her main story is the foundation story of Rome, the city of Rome. So it kind of explains the beginning and the origins of the ancient Romans, where they came from and how they came to be. So the story kind of is based around Romulus and Remus, and they're two babies. I mean, it goes back before then. So their great uncle and their granddad, you have a bit of a falling out. There's a change of like who's in power, and then their mother Sylvia is the virgin Vestal, that is the daughter of a king that's ousted, etc. So these two babies are seen as a threat to the throne, so they are kind of made to be put to death. They're put in a basket, made to be drowned, but obviously that doesn't happen. Somebody somewhere has a conscience, and the babies end up in this basket that just goes down the river instead. And then this river just happens to arrive at the feet of a she-wolf, who's known as the she-wolf. And she finds them, she suckles them, she rescues them, she looks after them. And following that period with her, they then go on to become the founders of the city of Rome and the whole of the Roman people. You know, they become leaders, they become kings. So I read this story. I found it during the very kind of a time when I was going through redundancy. I had been in what I thought was my absolute dream job. I'd been working in the heritage sector for 10 years up to get this role. And I was made redundant, and I found myself relieved. And I was very confused because I was like, that was my dream job. Why am I relieved that it's gone? So I started to question, who am I? Where am I going? Why am I here? What am I doing? And then I found her story, and I call it her story because really she's the most pivotal character, because without her, nothing else could happen. Romulus and Remus would have died. You know, she kind of had this pivotal role, and the way the story, I kept researching it, I kept finding it, and it was all about Romulus and Remus and how these boys became men, and the men were doing this, and the men were doing that, and then a man did this, and I was like, but there's a female figure here that I feel like is really pivotal, really important, and she has more to tell us. And I got really inspired to tell her point of view, her story, her message, and it was really speaking to me at the time, because I felt like I was journeying with Lupa through what I was going through. So this redundancy, this questioning of who I am. So I felt very much like I was a baby that had been thrown into the river. So that, not knowing where I'm going, out of control. And then I landed at her feet, and she took me into her cave, kind of, which I saw as like this dark night of the soul, where I was completely naked, completely vulnerable. There was nothing else apart from me and her, just questioning, who am I? Why am I here? And then I left kind of that cave with her, although she continues to walk with me, of course, but I left that cave kind of more aligned with my what I call destiny. So this knowing, this understanding why I am the way I am, and why I am in particular here. So that's kind of her, very, very briefly, that's her story, and that's how I connect to her and why.
No, I had cool chills there when you were saying how you fell at her feet on the river. Like that's such amazing connection there. Now, you spent a lot of time on the history of Rome in this book. I know you have an upcoming Pantheon, the Romans, but this one's pretty in depth there. How important, and this led you to the whole queens and she-wolf idea, and I have my Queen of Everything mug here today for that moment. We'll get that around there. In which you were saying that every time you read about a queen and a she-wolf in the same section, that's where you went hunting. That's where you went to look at. So how important do you think that history is to the spirituality?
Ooh, okay. So I think history is important because it offers us an example, an example to either follow or to not follow. And I kind of see that as the point, really. Like, I had so many, like, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of, I have a love for history, and I kind of wanted to share it so much because I kept getting told so many times, oh, history's just boring. It's like loads of dates. Or again, it's a man doing something and a man doing something and a man doing something. I might have done lots of wonderful things. However, it felt very kind of like tunnel vision. And I was like, I know there's more to it. I find it exciting. Like, maybe I'm just nosy and curious, like, but I love knowing what other people have done. How have they lived? What choices have they made, and why? What impact have they made or chosen not to make? And I feel that history kind of has that inspiration for us, like I said, to either follow or to not follow. So it can help you with discerning, whether something's right or wrong for you. It gives you an example, or especially, there's nothing that you can do that hasn't been done before. Although we all walk a path uniquely, every path has kind of been trodden. So there's always somebody that's gone through something similar that we can relate to. So if you're going through something, by looking back, you can see examples. Maybe they're recorded in history, or maybe you're having a resonance with an ancestor from the past, but there'll be somebody that's gone through something similar that can offer advice, or can be with you to show you, what's possible. So that's, I think, is the value of history. Rather than just dates, it's kind of like a manual, I suppose, of how to do. So I've always adored history. I ended up doing my degree and my master's in history. And while I was doing my master's, I was doing my undergraduate degree, I decided to specialize in medieval queenship for my dissertation. So my dissertation was about how queens were viewed in society, their expectations, and how that matched what they wanted, and how they lived up to that, and what it meant for them. And what I found really interesting is while I was doing that, every time kind of like a queen did something that was pushing at her own bounds, she was called a she-wolf. You know, it's like Isabella of France, Eleanor of Aquitaine. They were all called she-wolves. And that she-wolf, that term, was meant to be something derogatory. So, you know, it was kind of like, you know, a bad word to make her kind of look like maybe a slut, or, you know, one that was, you know, doing what was against the church or against her king, etc. But for me,
or today we might say a Karen.
Yeah, yeah. Well, exactly. I feel sorry for all the amazing Karens out there, you know. I know some pretty awesome Karens. That,
yeah, I don't know why they just had to pick a name, but
I know. I mean, it could have been Rachel, then I would have been stumped. No one would have had me on the podcast. But, you know, like, but that just like, it kept highlighting for me every time that this word she-wolf came up. I was like, right, I need to take notice of this woman, what this woman's doing, what this queen is doing, because that means that really it's something that's going to inspire me. And I knew it would, because it meant that she was doing something for her, not what was expected of her. Despite the fact that she would be judged, she was doing something that was bringing her fulfillment. And so like when I found Lupa, the she-wolf, the ultimate she-wolf, the she-wolf at the beginning, you know, kind of the mother of all she-wolves, I was like, gosh, this term has come up again. And that's fascinating, you know, that there's a reason why. And so I mean, I'd be quite proud to call myself a she-wolf. It means that I am wobbling structures, that I am pushing at the bounds, you know, that I am stirring things up. And I think we have a bit of a responsibility to be doing that, especially now.
yes, that's the timing is absolutely perfect for Lupa. It's almost a handbook. So yes, the spirit. I don't know. I mean, yes, battle books and things like that, how history has been presented to us, can seem boring, but it's so exciting when you look into the actual lives of people. And I think that's the big thing, is to understand how the people related to all those other things go around, which you described wonderfully and perfectly, as you do in your writing, Rachel.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
so yes, now oh my gosh, your first, and maybe it's just the timing, but your preface face is just soul inspiring. It's like a call to battle. Okay, it's Boudica. It's it's or however you're supposed to say it. Like, it's just wonderful. So I was like ready to go after that. I was like, oh my goodness, it's so good that Rachel is using her powers for good, because because otherwise you could inspire. Well, I think you're using your powers for good. And, you know, like the mug says, I'm the queen of everything. So I'm just. So I'm just going to read a quote from that, because you were just describing that. But just to put people in the mind of what I'm about to ask you. When a woman was described as a she-wolf in these medieval times, and also earlier in the Roman context of our she-wolf, Lupa, it was a term to highlight a woman as wild and untamed as a wolf, when often she was just pushing and pulling at her patriarchal bounds. Queens and poor women alike were labeled as she-wolves. Now, after reading this, Vicky's mind went to, I wonder if that's why they use the term bitch towards women. And on page 10, you answered that. You were in my head and said, much as these days people would use the derogatory term bitch in an attempt to offend a woman we wish to judge and label as wrong. Now, we've all been young. We've all, well, I'm not going to say all, but I certainly have been called that name on occasion. There's not that it would bother us at certain times in our lives, but we are vulnerable at other times, especially when we're young and we want positive affirmation. How important do you think it is to heal any wounding that may cause in your journey with Lupa? Is it a beginning thing? Does she just take care of everything at the same time? Like, how would you describe that healing in her terms?
Yeah, so I think we have many labels that have been put upon us, and that we'll come across them, as we move through our journey, our healing journey. So some perhaps we've forgotten, some that have stayed with us, that are on our mind, and some that we have actually made ours, which is often what does happen. So you often see that, like I see it with like children and teenagers, and people kind of go, oh, well, that teenager is so nasty. And they'll say it again and again and again and again. And like, you're just reaffirming it, that you're pushing that in deeper into that sponge of their self. And then, they're almost like living up to that. Like, say if their parents have an expectation, they're going to live up to that because they want to fulfill, what their parent is expecting of them, or what society is expecting of them. And we end up having this identity crisis, like I say, who am I? Like, which label am I? Because I remember being told, growing up, that I was too good. But then also I'd be told off for being naughty. I was too quiet. I was too loud. I was too this. I was too that. And they were always like opposites. And I was like, okay, well, what am I then? Because everybody's telling me what I am. And some of those terms, we do take them as ours. So they get projected onto us and we kind of receive them, and it's not till often later in life that we learn about having boundaries, healthy boundaries. And so often we're taking all these things in and they stick to us. They stick to certain parts of our psyche, of our body, or things like that. So kind of like, for me, like a good girl, she's so good, she's so quiet, that kind of really stuck on my solar plexus, on my seat of power. And it led to loads of things, like I wasn't able to feel anger, I wasn't able to feel frustration, I was numb when it came to kind of like what I would call those masculine feelings, those feelings of authority. And I think that, you see that happening a lot, like I think we were discussing it before, about like kindness or niceness. People go, oh, that person's so nice, and then they feel like they kind of have to live up to that expectation, don't they? And then that nice actually becomes distorted. They can resent it, and then it becomes a negative thing for them. Whereas actually, being nice and being kind, and we discussed this last time about radical kindness. So that's like my bad. But it can become distorted. So, but these, they'll crop up at different times. And I think we like Shrek, with the layers of an onion. You'll take one layer off, which is one piece of clothing that's been put upon you by somebody else, and there'll be another piece of clothing. And you have to keep taking them off to your kind of finding out like the shape of you. Oh, bless God, what's that, like a Ed Sheeran quote as well? Shrek, Ed Sheeran, what am I going on about? The shape of you. So you're taking off, so that you're completely naked in the end, so that there's no labels, there's no expectations, no judgments, no conditions, and in the end that you've got you. Before all of that was put on, and we might get a glimpse of that. We take off enough layers so we get a glimpse of who we are before all of that, and then we might find another layer, perhaps a bracelet that was put on by somebody, that says that we shouldn't take action, with our hands. So it's an ever evolving thing, like I think the healing journey, the empowerment journey, it never stops. It's not like, oh, I've done all the work now, I'm done, I'm okay, I'm great. Even those that are leading, even those that are 80 years down the line, there's still stuff there. But okay, oh no, I'll stop there. I was going to go off. I was going to carry on. I'll go on forever. That's fine.
So it's just, you would say it's just part of the whole journey. It's not a specific healing that needs to happen. It's just part of our whole experience with Lupa, and it just all sort of happens in layers and
Mhm.
things like that. I will let you go on if you want to. What also occurred to me is her in the healing of the mother, whether it be
Mhm.
someone has mother issues that didn't relay well in their early childhood, or even someone who has lost a child, whether it be through estrangement or death or location. She just seems to me someone that could work with you on that you could work with that.
Yeah, so she herself holds the energy of mother, so she can be like, for me, I have the most amazing mother. She is so supportive, but I do feel that Lupa is like a surrogate mother as well. You know, she's kind of like my spiritual um mother, you know, that because I came to her as a metaphorical, you know, baby. And I'm growing with her. She can also help us and inspire us to embody the archetype of mother wolf. So she is the, you know, the creator, she who nourishes. So she's the one that, you know, is going to teach us how to mother ourselves, as well as mothering other, because, you know, a lot of our wounds are actually around mothering ourselves. So we see examples of, you know, mother in the world, and they're not healthy, you know, and so we followed that example, and we don't mother ourselves in the best way that we could. So Lupa is really a guide for that, you know, in the way that she mothers Romulus and Remus. She kind of opens her paws to everybody else, so they can come into her cave and have that time to rest, to sleep, to dream, to pivot, to recover, to heal, whatever's needed.
Which is really interesting. As I mentioned, we were mentioning timing and Lupa. Sometimes, and I could be wrong, but it's my show. Sometimes I feel like, well, I know that one of the reasons it might bother us to say people saying that we're nice or we're, you know, kind or whatever, is that means weakness, nurturing. And in Lupa's case, here is this very, well, vicious if you attack my little boys, and
Mm-hmm.
just with nurturing all of these things, kindness and niceness and nurturing, and they all have different sides to them when boundaries are crossed.
Yeah. Yeah, so the wolf really embodies, you know, paradox. And I talk about that about, you know, more my second book, about kind of this paradox of being gentle yet strong, you know, fierce yet nurturing. So those teeth of the wolf, you know, can rip apart a carcass, yet they can gently lift a puppy, you know, and move it and lick it. So they kind of are a demonstration of that same paradox, that everything in nature encompasses, including us. So we are also a paradox. We have, you know, the shadow and the light within us. Neither is better than the other. Um, in fact, we can use both. Both are supportive of us. And we need to integrate both within us as well, you know, learn about them. How do they show up in us? And Nupa can help with that, because she goes into the cave and back out again. She goes into the darkness. We need to follow her into that darkness for the reason to become back out into the light. So you learn something in the dark, then you come back out in the light to express, you know, you go in, like saying before about kind of, you know, for me, like my biggest shadow was anger. You know, I had absolutely nothing. I'd closed off to it completely, because I grew up, you know, with that, like that good girl thing, you know, about like anger wasn't something I was entitled to, that I was allowed to feel. Therefore it had been cut off. You know, I was meant to be nice and kind and happy and jolly all the time, because it made it easier for everybody else. But then I actively thought, okay, well, I'm going to explore this, I'm going to look at this, see what it feels like. And I realized that when I started looking at anger, that it wasn't just like a random emotion that just floated around. There was a reason why certain things made me angry.
And it's a heads up.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. And it kind of it gives you, it's a fire. It's a fire that can motivate, that can inspire, that can drive you. So it is, it's seen as a negative thing, but actually, like anger, like I could get angry with things that have happened to me in the past, or can I use that fire to maybe do something about the future? So making sure that doesn't happen for other people, So I forgot what the question was.
so, so am I. I was just connected. That it is a duality, okay? That it is a
Yeah.
duality. Regardless of what society thinks, it is a duality. So while we may, wolves are nurturing, they're also protective, and that
Yeah.
takes being they know the boundaries, they know what those emotions are,
Hmm.
so when society looks at you and says, you're just nice and I can walk over you, and all of this, and I have to,
Hmm.
I think more it's about having to portray this very tough image. When you look at the world, if there was a wolf, you would think of motorcycles and tattoos. I mean, that's usually how they display that. And depending on what you're reading, like very, very sexy men in like leather pants and many muscles. But that is not what our true wolf is. Um, you can
And I think there has been a little bit of a distortion around that, because like there's a gym that opened up near me called Alpha, and it was exclusive to just men to go and do weights. And I was like, gosh, again, that's like, this misconception about, like, there's an alpha kind of leader of the wolf pack, and I was thinking, they've completely, like, where's this story come from, that it's a very patriarchal one about just this kind of powerful, kind of dangerous, kind of nasty kind of male that's in charge, and then everybody else like follows because they're whimpering behind, and they've used like the wolf pack as that kind of demonstration for that. And I think, gosh, that's so far. If you knew anything about wolves, you would know that often it's the women that are in charge, but it's more an equal partnership, and the pack is just their children that are learning, and once they've learned enough, they'll then become leaders themselves, and it's just
with
another one of these
the skills
distortions.
they have. I mean, remember in Wolf, you were saying that depending on the skill, the leader
Hmm.
might be different people at different times
Yeah.
because they have the skill to lead in that, and it's working as a pack, it's working together, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So off on a little anecdote of my own story, I remember when my dog was not listening to me. It was a lovely dog, but he wasn't listening, and we were doing scout things, and one of the other leaders said, well, that's because of the high pitched voice. They relate more to the male because of the high, the alpha sound. And then my son said, oh no, in my house, mom is the alpha. It's like, yes. And that was
Mhm.
because my husband was driving truck at the time. And I told him, look, I need to have the power. Like, I don't need to be under, I'm with them all the time. I'm
Yeah.
growing them to be people. I need to have a handle on that. So we just let that run, and it doesn't. And I think
Yeah.
we should say when we talk about this, that it's nurturing for everyone, whether it's males who got told that they were
Hmm.
too nurturing, and things like that. We just have
Hmm.
this whole mess out there we need to clean up, people. And we will help if we read Lupa. Um,
Hmm.
get that down. Robin
Well,
says,
she helps you to kind of work out, what your power is, what it is uniquely that you have to give, and I was just listening to your story then and thinking, it shows where the real power, I think, is. Say I gave you the scenario of, like, there was someone that was really, really kind to you and supportive of you, and they were gentle in that. And then there was someone who scared you by shouting at you. Now, which one of those would you follow to the ends of the world and do anything for?
exactly, exactly.
That shows where the power is. The power is in love. Okay, that person may scare you in that initial moment, but you would walk to the ends of the world for that one that shows you a little bit of love, so, or hopefully a lot of love, but that kind of shows you. And like I said, Lupa can help us to see what our unique skills are, because everybody is completely unique. We all have something that is a jigsaw piece that we have to offer to this world. You were made on purpose. You were made with purpose. You're not a mistake, and nothing about you is a mistake, from the way you look, the way you sound, the way you act, the experiences you've got. All of that is contributing somehow, and she will help you to work out what, how, when.
And that is perhaps what we mean by wisdom, because this is something that happens as we grow older. And if we are growing in that wisdom, we understand that people are just learning and experimenting with different selves until they get to the right one, right? I mean, she's perfect there. She was at the beginning, and she's just sent them out and let them be. So Robin says that he didn't know about the she-wolf term and to shame women, and he finds that very interesting, and that's the point. Rachel is very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing that new knowledge, Robin, that you obtained. We can go home now. No, it's Robin like that, but it is it is important to see all those parts and where we were.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
I get off
that,
track.
Oh, sorry.
No. I was just saying, this is why I need notes, because I'm still thinking about that conversation. Go ahead and talk while I figure out where I am in this.
I was just going to say, it's interesting that, when we use the term wolf, for a man, it's a positive thing, but then you use the same thing, she-wolf or bitch, for a woman, and it's a negative. When things like that come up, we need to kind of question why, so it's been okay for a man to be ferocious, to be powerful, but then not for a woman. This is why the she-wolf kind of became a derogatory thing, so it's kind of that thing that was whispered about a woman behind her back, so it has those negative connotations, doesn't it?
It does. And as long as you're being kind to people and not being mean, sometimes, Rachel, I wish social media had never been invented. It's just not a nice place to go, and it can really, really warp your idea of what is happening out there in the world. And then you walk away. I can walk as far as my little free library outside my door. I meet 3 wonderful people that are donating books or just talking about what they love to read or whatever. And it's not that criticism has gotten so out of hand lately. So
people feel they can be mean because, like things people will say on like comments, you think, gosh, like, say that to someone's face, because like people just feel like they have this permission to just be mean online. I think we were talking about this last time. That's how we got into that.
We get carried away, but we're the same people. It hasn't changed though, Rachel. We didn't change it.
I think it's been getting worse, I think, and it's because the comparisons that we're making are pushing us more into this flight or fright, aren't they? The comparisons are getting more and more. So when people say a negative thing about somebody, it's kind of this, they do it to make themselves feel safe, so every kind of thing we have always comes down to fear, really. So if you're like, bully tactics, if the bullying is being directed to somebody else, it's not being directed at you, so you're safe, so you're still in the pack.
It is. And I always said, we're like this much from a gladiator's arena, right? The sheer of civilization, the veneer is not that thick. So when you go on social media, you can see that. You can see how they will just all jump in on some woman who's just not, not doing. But I think that we just have to keep being nice and being strong and show them how that is, and not read the comments. read the comments. It's so hard because, like you said, you're interested in history. You're interested in human, what they do and how they think. And so if you're drawn into that, it can be easy to do, but we can all just be nice and
I do
have
find it interesting and fun though, because I will go through the comments and I go, I wonder what made them like that. Like what what triggered that, like why, what did their parents do that has led them making that comment? I get curious about it, and I kind of think, oh, I just want to talk to them more, because I'd love to know, like, get to the nitty gritty of what's the fire, behind that.
well,
just being
that's
nosy.
no, but this is it, and it's much better that you do it in the comments than in your neighbor's yard, right? You don't. The comments are saying they put themselves out there. I hear you, and then when you. How can you not feel sorry for them? Like they're spending their entire days. I mean, people in our country, and Tim Hortons bringing out a retro donut. Which one should we bring out? And these people are very vicious. Like, it's not just politics; it's everything. Like, it just, I don't like that wedding dress. So I just feel, how can it be to live that life? To be so angry and sit there for so long, because you have to. How can you reply if you're not just sitting so quickly on that computer, just looking, for one? And some people say, well, it's fun, but yeah, I don't think that's the term for.
No, you just, when you see those comments, or when you choose to comment yourself, it's just remembering that every single person that is commenting, including yourself, is human.
Yes.
Just a human.
And
I mean, some might be robots
they have
now,
no superior power. And I don't comment on, I just comment on people I know, or if someone asks a question, or those ones that get started. No, that's pure entertainment. I don't get involved. It's like if someone comments something I'm thinking, I'm like, all right, for you. But because I won't. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to get involved in those things, but it's important to remember that they're human, and that there's a whole world out there where people are not acting like that. I mean, they may be thinking that, but we can only change one thing at a time. That's all we can do. So when we're talking about speculative, I'm going to jump to this question. Now, in this book, because I thought it was kind of fun, in Lupa, you talk about how it's interesting how in Lupa's time, as far as deities go, a lot of the deities before her were animal images. And then as humanity went further and the religions evolved, because they always do, deities became more in human form. They were more human images. And as it continues to change, what I even put there, this is just for speculation, just for fun, but could it go back to the deities to be mostly of animal form? What do you think that possibility is?
Yeah, I certainly see, in my clients and, in my groups and stuff, that people are definitely resonating with animals more. And I think because of their simplicity, and I don't mean simple as in stupid or lesser than, but simple as in they're nothing more than they are. Like, we make things so complicated, so complex now, like almost like each deity needs like a manual that's like 50,000 pages, but there's a simplicity in the animal, in nature still, that nature still is as it was, 20,000 years ago and more. There's this kind of like unadulterated, kind of not humanized kind of way to them, so like deities, like they started to become like more and more human gradually over time. So for the ancient Romans, you have in the origins, looking back to the Sabines and the Etruscans, and then before then the Villanovians, you've got this very elemental kind of, they see they called them numens. So you've got everything is sacred, a bit like animism, you know, everything's sacred. Like, it's not that Jupiter's using the thunder. Jupiter literally is the thunder. It's the name for thunder. That's how he manifests, you know, as that. And I think that, like I said, now when everything's so complex and confusing and there's so much information out there, I think we're kind of leaning back towards this simplicity of spirituality and the simplicity of connecting to the divine, you know, in that you go out and your spirituality is going out and touching a tree, connecting with a tree. There's no need to kind of fill out 10,000 forms and be on the phone for 30 minutes, like, you know, getting your breakdown cover. People want that simplicity now to just go out and touch a tree because they don't want all of this confusion. Like, you know, I think sometimes, like, you know, because I research ancient Roman history. That's why I share in my book, like Pantheon of the Romans, and in my work as well. And very much in there, you know, they're going on about rituals that, you know, requires like 10 different herbs. You've got to stand on one leg. You've got to put this certain hat on your head that's been done this and done that. You know, say these certain words in this certain way. It's very complicated, you know, it gets, it's just too much. And I think when we're being bombarded by information all the time, we just need that simplicity that the natural world offers. I think it is becoming more appealing, and you can find that relief there, you know, where you can switch off your phone. You don't have to look at a text, you're just feeling. And in fact, that's probably going to be, as more and more we get, you know, AI and more kind of like computers and more of this information, I think we're going to need that connection more. You know, we're going to need to find something that's real, and nature's going to continue to be real. You know, it can't, you know, can't be any other way. It is what it is. And I think that's why some people are drawn to the wolf, you know, and trees and everything else. And that it's going back to, things come around in circles, don't they? You know, it's this, these are the ancient Roman deities, you know, like, you know, back when, you know, Venus was literally just a vine. She wasn't, you know, this kind of, there wasn't this complexity of, you know, like, that comes later on.
I agree completely. It is a simplicity, and there is this animal. I can merely look into its characteristics and see what is trying to speak to me, what that identity is. The nice thing about books like yours and things is that you talk about your experiences and what you learned from them, and they're templates to apply to our lives if we like to. But we don't need that to just, I mean, if you're in, like here in Ontario, we have Algonquin Park. And if you're canoeing out there and you hear the wolves howling in the background, in your tent at night, it is experience that you will never forget, and that will stay with you always. And that is real. It is, which is, we got, you say that Lupa brings out the honesty in us about ourselves and about the things around us, even though it can be difficult. And this is another reason why I think this is very important at this time, because with AI, I mean, you can't even trust your eyes anymore. It can be difficult to know when you see something, if that is real or not. With so many ideas and things being expressed on the internet. I mean, and simply, like we said, the comment section does not reflect a walk down the street. If it did, I would be in tears all the time. But that need for that truth, and yeah, as you expressed so nicely, nature is that truth.
Yeah, and in that truth means it has room for faults, you know, like we have room for faults. Like, I think sometimes with like making social media posts, like, you know, I get to like the third edit and I'm like, whatever, if it doesn't make sense, if there's a spelling mistake, like, at least they know that I wrote it, not like some chat, whatever that thing is, you know. But it, you know, this kind of this, you know, this artificial stuff is not leaving any room. It's a pretend perfection that we would never kind of, you know, be able to reach, and therefore it's kind of making us feel more like we're faulty, like there's something wrong with us. Nature will show us in her bumps and her grooves and the way that some leaves are crinkly and some are turned, you know, that that perfection isn't what perfection is in nature. It's a different type of perfection.
It is, and we are sitting here in fear of robots or AI when actually we are trying to make people those things, right?
Mm.
Like people who pick up a spelling mistake, honestly, they knew what you were saying. They're just trying to shut you down, as far as I'm concerned, because everybody makes. I mean, I'll write out a quick email to somebody who's an author. Think, oh my goodness, and then realize, oh my goodness, I just used, and I'll push send because I'm dangerous that way. And I'm like, I just used the wrong there. Now I know the difference between the there. I just was in a hurry and my fingers stuck on their own thing because I'm doing something. So once again, we have to remember that those people quite often aren't doing anything and they just want to shut other people down who are. So that's just the way it is, because they're afraid, and so we need some of that wolf braveness. Okay, so during this, let's look at your travels, and then we can come back to some questions. Okay, so we're gonna put up pictures here, people. Newness, always a possibility, but I'm trying. Okay, there we go. All right, tell us about this picture.
So that's my behind.
We're not making any comments.
It's a beautiful behind. We can all admire
It is wonderful, but I didn't feel comfortable saying that. I will let you.
So this picture is from a place that is kind of one of my most favorite places in the whole world. So it's the Palace of Festos in Crete. So one of my principal deities that I adore is Rhea. So Rhea from the Greek Pantheon. And I've been studying Rhea and I've been connecting to her and worshipping her for quite a while. And that I had this really kind of synchronicity of there was a time when I was kind of like researching her for something, and it turned out that I learned about at this temple of Festos, there is the Palace of Festos, there's a temple to her, and she gave birth to Zeus, on Crete, and there's a cave there connected to her. And I was reading about this, and it's just one of those things that just happens. This is just meant to be. And I was just researching it, and my brother texts me saying, "I've just booked a holiday for you to go to Crete." I hadn't mentioned it at all, that I was thinking about this. I was researching it, and he just had booked it. So this was 3 years ago, and I went to Crete with this expectation that I would be able to see the temples, I'd be able to worship her, give offerings, I'd really be able to connect to her. It's quite an interesting story. I will carry on with it rather than stop. But I was trying to find her all over Crete, and we'd booked on to go to a trip to go to the palace, and we got we got about 3 hours into going the wrong way in Crete with our tour guide. And I was absolutely distraught because I was this is the only chance we had 3 days left before we left. And I was panicking, I'm not going to be able to get to this temple. I'm not going to be able to connect to her or thank her or find her because it can only be done in a temple. I have to be in her temple. I knew it was the temple. And I was in tears. And because I wasn't going to get there because I knew the tour had gone completely wrong. And then the tour guide, he knew that I did flower essences and I was into herbs and stuff. He was like, "Oh, I'm just going to take you somewhere, just because you're upset, I'm just going to take you somewhere." So he took us up to the top of this mountain, and he took us to a grove of the oldest olive trees in Europe. And he took us there to an olive tree that's 5,500 years old. And I went to this olive tree and I touched this olive tree. And then Rhea said, "This is me. I'm here. I am this tree. You're looking for me in the buildings. You're looking for me in the rituals, in the ceremonies, in the, all these things that I should be doing. I'm just here. I'm in the tree. You need nothing more but, come to me and touch me. Here is the tree. And that moment was absolutely life-changing for me. And I did actually, the funny thing is that I got to the Temple of Festos, and I connected so deeply with it. I just knew it was a place that I've been before, that I just connected to on a soul, heart, body level, everything. But the temple part, Rhea's temple, was actually completely closed off. Like nobody could go there. So I even got like as close as I could, and I still couldn't get in. This picture was like a few minutes before that I went again this year, because I was determined to actually get to the temple despite everything. And I was like,
regardless of what the olive tree said, you were just...
I know. I was stuck. I'm going to get there one day. So this pathway comes out of the Megatron. So the Queen's chamber, where the queens and the priestesses would have been, takes them into the courtyard. You go down the hill to the Temple of Rhea. Yet again, it was closed completely. And I was like, you just don't... You do hear the lesson the first time, but again, it's like layers. I needed to hear it again. Like, she's the olive tree. And I realized that there was, went back to the village, and there was an old olive tree there just outside a restaurant that nobody was looking at, nobody taking any notice of. And I was like, well, there she is. She's not in the temple.
Is that the olive tree you have a picture of here? Or is that a different? You sent a picture of an olive tree.
Oh, there's probably are you going to put it up? Because I can't remember which one.
Okay, I'm going to take this one away now. Are we done with this picture?
Oh, yeah, that's kind of the story of
that picture. Okay, that one didn't fit. That one didn't. So I'm going to remove that from studio and go over here. I work best if I speak out what I'm doing aloud for some crazy reason, people. So I am hitting the image file. And I'm going to the last picture. Create olive. Okay, is that the one? Yes, here. I think this to me would look like the picture.
Okay. Right, I know what you mean now. Okay, so this isn't the olive tree, but this was kind of the lesson from Rhea, that she's in every olive tree. Like, she's in every tree. Like, she is just nature. That's where I can find her and feel her. But this is the city, or I suppose at that time it was a town maybe, of Gortin, which is the Roman capital of Crete, ancient Roman capital of Crete. And my story there is exactly the same story. It's going to make you laugh. Like, this is such like a lesson for me. I've got it now. I've got it. I'm listening. That I went there because another one of my favorites and my beloveds is Apollo, and I wanted to go to his temple. I've been there twice. Could I find it? No. I was looking everywhere for this plumbing temple, like trying to find it, searching everywhere, like delaying everybody, like, getting lost, like taking my poor brother like off into the random wilderness where we could have been kidnapped, like just like trying to find this temple. And both times did I find it? No. And again, it was just like, and then I went, so I visited Gortin. It's amazing, do go there. It's got one of the one of the first inscriptions of like a Roman law. But I went back to our resort, and I went out in the evening, and I felt the sun on my face, and Apollo was like, this is me. I'm here. I'm with you now. And it was the sun rays on my face, and both times it was a reminder that you don't need a building. FYI, I'm still going to find them both.
Because she's not only nice and kind, she's also very stubborn. It's determined. Okay, we'll just call Rachel determined.
Oh, but yeah, both times, these lessons, like, and and it's funny because we have these expectations. Like, it's one of the reasons why I kind of, as growing up, like, I was brought up in a church, and I didn't resonate with it, because I was like, I don't feel it here in the building. I feel God when my feet are in the water. I feel him, her, it, when the wind's on my face, you know, I couldn't understand why it would be contained to a building, why it would just be inside there. You know, and that's what my lessons were from Crete. You know, that's what it taught me, you know, is it, she, they, him, you know, is everywhere and everything, you know, especially nature.
Especially, and it brings us back to that whole simplistic idea that you were talking about before, how important it is. I want to also point out that in a lot of your pictures that I see on social media or wherever, your hands are out, which, you know, accepting. And that can be seen as a very vulnerable situation. But what's going on in your head when you do that, Rachel? What is your motivation?
So, you know, I think, like, for me growing up, and I mean, I'm still quite an introvert. So, you know, I can only cope with so much peopling.
I hear you.
You know, and the arms open, you know, is openness. You know, it's either I'm open to receiving or I'm open to giving. And for me, it feels like a very powerful, when I'm in my power, my arms open, because naturally growing up, I wanted to hide. I wanted to contain. I wanted to keep small. I didn't want to be seen. And sometimes I still struggle with that. So then for me, the most powerful thing I can do is to open my arms. And in doing that, I'm offering kind of my full, confident, courageous self, and courageously giving my love, you know, to nature, to the divine. For some people, their posture, their power posture might be different. So actually, if they don't go inside, they're not so great with their emotions. That is their thing. Actually, touching themselves might be their power, you know, their power stance, their power posture, because that's where they feel confident. Their most courageous self would be to touch themselves again. So kind of when I'm in nature, when I feel the divine, that when I'm full of power, my arms naturally open, because that would be my most, like you said, most vulnerable way of being, is to be fully open, to be seen, you know. It's
So
also
you
very
can be
flattering.
vulnerable and brave and courageous at the same time. I mean, I almost think that you have to be, because you have to have a certain bravery in order to be vulnerable. I think.
The most powerful thing you can do is open the heart, you know. That is the most powerful thing you can do. And the most courageous thing to do is to feel. It's not to run a country. It's not to be a multimillionaire. You know, it's not courageous. You know, the most courageous thing you can do is love.
And that is so, as we said, we can't fix the world today, Rachel. Okay.
We'll try.
We've done it. We've done our fair share. But now here you are, and tell us about your. And I just want to point out that Rachel is holding her new upcoming book, Pantheons, the Romans, and I believe what it says in that little print at the bottom is the history of Roman religion. Is that what it?
Yeah. So. So this book, you know, kind of the first book kind of did go into ancient Rome, its foundation, a little bit more. This one is kind of focused on the whole Pantheon, and religion in ancient Rome. So I go from things like how people worshipped at home, how they worshipped near the temples, you know, what was a temple, where were the temples, who are the deities, who were the priests, etc. And then I've got, you know, the history of it, and then chapters actually on how to connect to the Roman Pantheon. So activities you can do, talking about the Capitoline Triad or the triads before that, you know, all that's in there. So it's more of a kind of a wider thing, you know, about kind of like the 20 kind of principal gods of ancient Rome. And then, so the picture is of me actually in Rome with the book, showing the book, the picture of itself, because the picture on the front
that is
kind
the
of
picture on the it's not just one of those
behind me.
yeah This is going to be like the
That's
cornflake
what you
box.
are.
Like you're just, this is infinite. Okay. Because then within that book picture, we see the next book.
Ooh.
No, don't go ooh. Stuff like that kept me up as a kid. Okay. Like, where does it end? So, and when it comes to simplicity, when we talk about those things, correct me if I'm wrong, because I am not the expert here. But wasn't the conquering of the world what created a weakness in Rome, because they couldn't have their people everywhere to take care of things after that? Like the fall of Rome was sort of because they overextended themselves.
I kind of see it as two different things. Yes, that, because imagine if there's just one manager, and okay, managing a team of 10 is doable, but then managing a team of hundreds of thousands, that one person is going to have a breakdown because they
Yeah.
just can't cope with that amount. And then also, I think like when you had the Roman Empire, they were very good at wherever they went. They were like, you can have your religion, you can have your deities. Completely fine. We accept that. In fact, they're kind of like this one, they're kind of similar to one of ours. So, it's okay. You can do
Yeah.
that because they got the same kind of vibe. But you still need to have the emperor as your ultimate authority. Like, even if you have your own god, the emperor is still ultimately in charge. Then when Christianity came along, it was very much kind of breaking that down, saying that no, the emperor wasn't the ultimate authority. Jesus is. We're not Jesus, the Christian church, which is a different thing. The Christian church is the ultimate authority instead. And this was what led to kind of like this conflict between the two, because, other foreign religions were tolerated in Rome, other things like Isabel, she's even adopted. So they were fine with other people doing other practices, Mithras and all that. But what bothered them was when, they let their religion become before kind of like, civil power. So I think Christianity really is kind of half kind of the reason for the breakdown, because then you have a different power coming up that's in charge instead, that's kind of in conflict to the emperor. So it's those two things really. They just got too big, and then they had a rival that was bigger than them. And all things come to an end,
Yeah, no,
eventually. They
it just,
evolve, So, so a lot of people argue that the Roman Empire never actually stopped. It just evolved. It changed into the Christian Empire instead, and in fact got bigger, because you were just kind of changing the Pope, they even got the
oh
same
my
name,
goodness.
Pontifex
That's
Maximus. You're just changing the authority,
that could take on a
two
lot of
robes,
conspiracy.
everything's the same.
It's not, no, yeah, no, I can see that. So obviously allowing uniqueness is a strength and a better way of keeping your power than being controlling and saying da this is the way it's going to be. See what we get into here. Okay. Now we know this lady.
Oh. Yeah, so this is the Capitoline statue of Lupa. So it's, I mean, when in ancient Roman times, there were Lupa statues all over the place. She's one of the most prominent figures. She is the mother of Rome. The one that breastfed literally Rome, as well as just Romulus and Remus. So she was honored, all over. There's only a few statues left of her now. This statue here is an Etruscan statue. The two children, Romulus and Remus, were added later. They're a medieval Renaissance introduction that has been tested, and they know now that's the way it is. And you'll find that with a lot of the ancient Roman statues of Lupa that were written about, when we've got images of, it's not very often that Romulus and Remus were actually there underneath. She was honoured for herself, as well as her role for rescuing Rome. Kind of this ferocity was something that inspired, Rome in its expansion. So this is that original kind of Etruscan she-wolf statue, and this is me next to her bawling my eyes out.
Because
It's just so moving to see her. And I was there for a very long time. I think I was making the security guard a bit twitchy because I was like just staring at her, like, you know, like I want to hug her and stuff. And I think they were getting a bit kind of like, is she going to try and fit that into her pocket? Or is she
But
going
did
to
you
run out
bring
any
one
minute?
home? I thought I saw. I thought I saw a stat. Did I see? Do you have? Were you able to go to the souvenir shop and buy a replica?
You know what? Rome doesn't have souvenir shops. I mean, like they have a few touristy shops that sell like I've got some socks with Lupa on. That's all I could find.
Oh my goodness.
Um,
Okay,
yeah. So I
I
have got
am
this
definitely a person that
statue.
thinks the environment.
Oh. But yeah,
Yeah.
I've got this statue kind of reproduced. Again, my brother must be magical because my brother, he didn't know that I was connecting to Lupa at the time when he bought this statue of Lupa for me. He found it in a local antique shop, just like in a town, like, you know,
Oh my
about an hour away
goodness.
from us. He just randomly found it and gave it to me. Oh, I thought you'd like this, you know, because you like wolves. And I was like, whoa, that's Lupa, like that's the Lupa. It's like, how did you know? And he's like, well, I don't know, I just felt like I had to get it. And I was like, goodness, like the synchronicities, you know, that happen, you know,
But
when you connect to something. And
you're close. And do you think that I'm not holding you to this or whatever, it's just speculation in my head. So that becomes sort of like a pack. Do you feel that things sort of go, because I know in here I will be thinking something and somebody else will say it. And I'll be
mm-hmm.
like, how that, so do you think there's a connection
Yeah.
there that goes beyond what people would normally figure would be there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all connected in the way that all, like, you know, trees are connected. So I think the best kind of you know, if you think about the roots going under a tree, or like, you know, in your garden, all the roots of every single plant, grass and tree are all touching, all connecting. So if like a tree at one end of the garden kind of feels something, it can send and tell signals to the other plant. I mean, they're not thinking about doing that, they just do it. So I think that, you know, like we have that connection with each other. It's stronger the more we're with people, I think, because those relays of energy and electricity are going more frequently. um for sure, yeah. Like, and I think that happens with a family quite a lot. Like I always remember, like, I can't remember who it is in my family, but my mum always tells me that, like, I think it was my tide was on he was in the Navy, and he was getting really, really, really bad, like pain, like intense pain in his lower abdomen, and he had no idea why. And they had to get him to port and get him off ship to get into hospital. There's nothing wrong with him. Then he found out that, like, my nine was having her baby, had her baby at the time, who was feeling it, and as soon as the baby was born, the pain stopped for him. I mean, he didn't know because the baby came like a month early. That's why he was still at sea. You know, things like that, that we have this shared connection, don't we?
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
I think that that's why it's so important that even if our family aren't doing the work, that we are, because we do have a ripple effect that goes out from us, you know, and affects the people around us. So you know, sometimes it can be difficult because you're like, oh, they're not. But then if you notice, the more that you change and you evolve, the people around you do as well. And they either come with you, or kind of like, you know, they might resist, they might pull, but they do kind of like, you know, evolve with you. Like me and my brother were really close. We're like best friends. And it, you know, you kind of like, these things happen, like this synchronicity in our lives, you know, happens all the time. And, you know, if I go through something, then he just kind of almost goes like through a version of it himself, and vice versa, you know. And I think that we think we're so, I think we often go through this thing where we're thinking we're so alone, we're so lonely, and it's just me, nobody knows how I'm feeling, and you get like really closed up, that even when you feel like that, you're not. We are connected all the time in so many ways, that people do feel you, the earth does feel you, nature does feel you. You know, you're never alone. Even if you know, you feel lonely, you're never alone, because that's going out into the earth, and then that a message is always coming back. You know, it's like electricity, kind of like, you know, going through the roots and coming back through the roots, and coming through the roots and coming back through the roots. And that can also help us as well. Sometimes when we're feeling like, oh, I don't know what this is. Like, I remember doing my access bars training, and one of the things they taught us to say, if we're ever feeling anything, is to ask, is this mine? Is this someone else's? Or is this something else? So something else when it belongs to the earth or what's going on in the planet. So, am I feeling like something that's going on in the Middle East? Am I feeling the resonance of that? Or is this something that I'm dealing with because I've got something that's coming up? Or is it somebody else, as in I'm being empathetic? Or, I'm just reacting to somebody, like somebody shouted at me. And, so it's this discernment about kind of, because we all have this connection all the time. So it is helpful to work out whose and what it is, where it's coming from.
No, I can see that being, and just thinking those things, I think that that would build the muscles of our self-awareness more. Like it's that what we do does affect other people as well. And when we're thinking like that, we're thinking less about ourselves, and sometimes that takes some of the pain away too. We can open our eyes just enough to see that other people um are not feeling um that any better than we are in a lot of cases. So yeah, important stuff. We're getting closer to fixing it, Rachel. We're getting closer to fixing it. Now here you are. Not that I'm saying, the world is where it's supposed to be at this point in time for whatever reasons. Okay, so I'm not saying it's all broken. Here, here we go, Rachel. I love this scarf, the color on you, and the whole greenery thing about me. About you.
This scarf goes with me everywhere because I've got orb in me, so I turn to a lobster in like 2 seconds of sun. So yeah, and but I also I like having a scarf with me wherever I go, because I do like to cover my head whenever I'm in a sacred place, because it helps me to internalize a bit. Because often, like I found in this location, that often our focus is less outward and what needs or wants to go down.
It's like a mini cave.
Like down into the earth. So this greenery behind me, that kind of like little lawn bit, underneath that, this is in Rome again. This is Palatine Hill. Underneath that is the original, one of the original villages of ancient Rome. This Palatine Hill here is where legend says that Romulus settled and had his first settlement, and the people there with him, Latins and Sabines, on this hill all mixing together. So they had their huts on there, looking like Bronze Age, is the remains under there into the Iron Age. And it was amazing, like this little pocket of green and calm right in the center of Rome, where it's so busy, it's a city. And it was funny, like, because the rest of the Palatine, everybody was running around, everybody was going quick. There were crowds, they were looking at their big brochures and their maps rather than looking where they're going. But at this point, like, people would walk through this area and there was like such a calm, and you'd watch people, they'd slow down. And I was here for ages with my friend, and we were kind of, he fell asleep, but I was
so
watching
calm.
people. So calm. I was watching people going past. They would slow down, they would sit down, and they would just sit there. They would stop talking. And I was like, whoa, there's something. People could feel the energy, even if they had no idea, what energy is. There was definitely something there. And at this point, I kind of wanted to connect to kind of like Romulus and that origin, that kind of the foundations. And I felt like it was really deep. Like in Rome, it was so deep because there's so many thousands of years of history there. This is what I mean, like, put my scarf up because my roots have got to go really far down to touch that part underneath. But it was just like, it was a beautiful moment, and there were bees and butterflies. And again, that's another thing. I was looking I sound like I'm on repeat, but I was looking for Lupa's cave on Palatine Hill, where she took Romulus and Remus, was eventually turned into a shrine, became a kind of small temple called the Lupa. And when I went to Rome in October last year, I was trying to get to it and it was closed off. And I couldn't get there. So again, I couldn't get to the blooming temple. And I was really disappointed. I got as close as I could. I was literally stood on top of it, but I couldn't get into it. And then we went to this part in nature with the trees after, and there I connected, and I just felt like this deep connection, back to the ancient past. And the message that came through to me from this section was kind of really about legacy, about the impact, what is left behind. So there's many layers that are kind of on top that are going to come after us, and what is still going to show through, all of those layers and all that stuff that happens after. So I was connecting to kind of Romulus here, and kind of thinking about him as a king, and then what did he create, and then what did that empire become. Would he have ever expected that? Would he have known that? And then even if he wasn't a real person, there's still that idea. Some people think that Romulus actually literally just translates as the Roman. It's like the original man that was like the king or chief, of the Roman of that area. That he actually had a different name, which is what became his deified name. But yeah, that area made me really reflect on, again, reaffirming, why am I here? Who am I? And therefore, as me, what do I do? Like, what do I leave behind? What difference can I make? What is the difference that I am? So if I leave nothing else, what do I leave? Whether that be a specific thing or just a feeling, it made me really contemplate that.
And even if it's just in one person's mind, it doesn't, when we speak of these things, we tend to get big. And as you said, simplistic is probably what we're looking for, right? Because if he was a real person, like you said, Romulus probably didn't think, "Oh, I'm inventing Rome." It was just doing the best that he could do. So I want to ask. There's a couple more things I wanted to ask you. Like in the book, there are, of course, there's a big section on the history, which is very, very interesting. And it talks about how times will affect the religion. In my mind, that's sort of how it was directed in facts. And then there is, of course, the obligatory, these crystals, these spices, these, a list of the things that are associated with Lupa. And that may help you in your journey with her. But Rachel, how do you personally in the moment? Like, I know you have a meditation, and for you see her, you said before, as like grandmother wolf, where you will go and get the knowledge, and this just leads this. And then I take that in my mind, I am seeing Little Red Riding Hood, and how, she taught all these people lessons, that even though it was a wolf, it was grandmother inside, but she, anyways, I might write a fan fiction of your book. This thing, is that meditation the best way you connect with her, or is she just there when you need her, like you said, in the garden? Or
so the tools that I put in the back chapters of of Lupa are kind of my way as a teacher, as I tend to offer a buffet. I offer a buffet so that you can pick whichever food you want to eat. And because some people resonate with some things and not with others, so you can pick and choose. Your way is going to be unique of connecting to her. So yeah, I do have meditations on my website, to connect with her as well. So I need a journey. You'll probably experience her in your own unique way. I've had students that have come to me and go, gosh, I've had this white wolf with me like my whole life, and I wonder if it's Lupa. So sometimes it's Scardy, but sometimes it is Lupa, and they just didn't have a name for her. She was just the white wolf. Or she may be completely new to you and you actually go and seek her out. Either way is fine as well. The way I would say to work with her more than anything else is to really kind of explore this question of what is my destiny, who am I, and then invite her every day, into your actions, into your thoughts, into remembering the uniqueness of you. So what she will do is when you come to her, she will invite you in as a puppy, to the wolf pack. And then as the puppy in the wolf pack, you need to work out how you're going to contribute to the pack, or how you do. So she's the mother that's going to lead as the alpha. She's going to teach you. She's going to help you with playtime and with learning time, finding ways to hunt, finding ways to do boundaries. But in all of that, she's teaching you how to be wolf yourself. So kind of your job is to go, well, how do I contribute to the pack of my family, the pack of humanity, the pack of time, the pack of the cosmos, what makes me unique? Like, what part do I play in this, and how have I been in falsity? How have I been living up to judgments and conditions and expectations, and what is right and true for me? What do I want to do? What brings me joy and brings me pleasure? That's like, I think because Lupa is the wolf, she's a bit like, sometimes she doesn't want all that fuss of like, if you started doing a ritual that got really complicated and, she'd be like, right, well, I'm just going to go off and sniff that tree. Like, sorry, she's just laughing. That, again, that simplicity, it's all that fluff that sometimes isn't needed. She says what's important is for you to be living authentically, to be living your truth. That's the biggest offering that you can give, is to be you, to be your difference, to make your difference the best way that you can, for the benefit of yourself and the benefit of all. So, like people go, oh, I used a blue candle instead of a white candle. I used a candle, like, okay, that symbology can help. It can help to give it extra layers. It can help to give different angles, and sometimes, the obviously color therapy and all that. But in the end, it doesn't matter. It's the fact that you have shown up, the fact that you have done something, anything, just do something is kind of her message, do something and do it well.
So what this has caused me to envision is if you have a dog and you're all running around getting ready for a trip or whatever is the excitement of the day, more than often they'll just be lying on the side going with that sigh. And I always looked at them and thought, he's thinking this is crazy, people. Like, you have everything you need right here. So it is that. And I think, yes, that simplicity is more important for, and I know that I got off topic in the real world, but I'm just seeing this Lupa as very timely because, one, the lead to simplicity. I mean, we have to be honest and say people are probably not going to have the money they once had for things, and to be able to just find what we need within nature or whatever is becoming more and more important. Also, because we have so much going on in the world right now, sometimes we just need to focus, and that's where the cave comes in. Also, we can go in there, let it just grow in us and come out with our new ideas and our new selves. And the pack idea, the not having to be this image in order to show strength, that nurturing and that is important and got forgotten. All of these things that I think would make a difference. And not that I know, right? I've been wrong before, but at this moment, I think would make a difference are in Lupa.
Yeah, I think that ultimately her lesson, like, like you said, you follow the example of a dog. So imagine like your loved one is there and you haven't seen them for like 3 or 4 months, and your pet dog is next to you and hasn't seen them either. So what you would do is you probably got to see them as you're approaching them. You'd be thinking, oh, are they still going to like me? Like, have they been cheating on me while I've been away? Like, do I look fat? Do I look stupid? Like, what's going to happen like the next 10 weeks? Like, have I got clean socks on, etc. Meanwhile, your dog has just run up to them and kissed them,
Yes,
has just run up to them and just expressed their love.
because
That simplicity, and I know that sometimes we do need to have more consideration about things, but that we made that so complicated. We didn't need to. What if we just went and expressed our love honestly, vulnerably, courageously, in every situation?
it would make a difference instead of being defensive, because that aggressiveness is actually a defensiveness. Um, Rachel, would you mind if I just took a minute to tell a story about a dog? We
Sure, go
had
for it. I love
because it
dog stories.
reminds me. Okay, so once upon we had a very old border collie mix that was like 12, and he started shaking. And I thought, okay, this is because he has too much responsibility. And I couldn't bear the idea of ever losing him because he had grown up with the kids and whatever. So I decided, after watching The Dog Whisperer, that we needed a new dog in our pack. So I told the children about this just outside of Algonquin Park at a trailer park. On a full moon, I said, I think we need to get another dog, because you don't tell children things like that without knowing what you're. Anyways, the next morning, a dog walked into our trailer, and our dog would never let another dog ever come close to us. And I'm like, what is this, Bond? What are you doing? Like, this dog just came in. So this dog had been living with a gentleman who just left him for like months at a time while he went to civilization or whatever. And he was like going off with the wolves, going off with like across the frozen lake. Like, he was on, people would find him on their roofs. I mean, this dog had and the girl said, oh, please take him home. So after a month or so, we went back and we got him. And he took a lot of time, because every time he heard a truck, he would bark, and we live on a busy road. I didn't sleep for 3 days with this dog. But my point being, I put him on the treadmill. He went on the treadmill. It became his treadmill because he couldn't like run miles with it. He was the most polite dog I have ever met. He would let other dogs eat in front of him. He had this whole thing about meeting other dogs along the way. It was the thing. But the thing that hit me most, because we often say domesticated is bad. We have to put out these images so that we don't look like we're tamed. This dog was so happy to lie at somebody's feet, because he finally found people to love him and to and a home. So on those days when the wind hits at a certain time, I would just look at him and think, no, it's a good place to be. And being domesticated is not all that bad.
No.
So,
And we can learn a lot from that. All we need to do is lie at the feet of the goddess, God, creator, whatever you call it. Just trust and just lie down. We don't need to do anything else. We don't need to perform. We don't need to, adhere to all of the rules that are set down. We just need to lie ourselves down at their feet.
and we'll be as the basket came to Lupa's feet, right? We can bring ourselves to that basket. Okay, you have a lot of stuff with Aurora going on. I haven't been able to look into it lately, but is there a particular reason we're heading towards Aurora?
Well, what I'm doing now is as I build up to releasing Pantheon the Romans, I'm kind of releasing my Goddess Wisdom, which is my YouTube series, and my newsletters are going to be featuring kind of different gods and goddesses. So I'm not writing a book on Aurora. She is connected, however, to the goddess who I am currently writing a book about. So my next book after Pantheon is all about Flora, who I don't know if you have. Do you have? I don't know if you have it in America, but in in the UK we have a type
Canada.
of margarine. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yes, you do.
I
I'm
just
so
thought I
sorry.
better. I would have like an entire country behind me saying,
I'm sorry. That's like saying Wales is in England. um, so sorry. So we have a margarine called Flora. So every time I mention her, my mom keeps going, "Oh, you're talking about the butter again." If they'll be watching this in Britain, they'll know what they'll think it's funny.
we don't.
Get us a margarine. So Flora is actually the ancient Roman goddess of flowers, of spring, of sensuality, sexuality, all the sexy stuff. She's, the flowers being pollinated. So I'm deep into that at the moment, loving it, because we're in the middle of summer and all the flowers are out, and so she's going to be my next Roman goddess, and I'm sure there'll be more gods and goddesses to come out in book form. But at the moment, on YouTube, you'll see me kind of going through all the different Roman gods and goddesses and providing ways to connect with them, a little bit more info about them, some easy, simple tools and practices. Always easy and simple with me, nothing complicated.
And you said in this book, which is why I'm not surprised about the flora, that you connect a lot with Lupa through the flowers and things. You're a flower person, because you're so nice. It's a good thing. Okay, so the Pantheon of the Romans comes out on January 26th of 20. Yeah, January of 26th. January 26th of 2026. There we go. That was right?
No, that's right. Yeah. So in the new year.
And
great way to start the new year.
And that's through Moon Books Publishing as well. And Flora, I'm assuming, is just still out there.
I'm still writing her, so sorry, you'll have to wait.
We don't know. We're just going to have to be patient with them. You can find Rachel on Facebook under it's the best place to see your meditations and things under Rachel S. Roberts, Wolf Woman Rising.
Yeah, so if you just put in Wolf Woman Rising, then you'll find me everywhere. So I think on Facebook it's my name, Rachel S. Roberts, and then Wolf Woman Rising, because I had to have my name in there. And then on Instagram it's Wolf Woman Rising Official, because somebody else got there before me. And then YouTube it's Wolf Woman Rising. So probably like the way that social media goes, where you can miss stuff, probably YouTube and my newsletter are the best place to make sure that you actually get all my stuff, and you get to be off social media. On Facebook,
you can go directly.
So if you like community, I have a group on Facebook. If you like to watch like behind the scenes stuff, my Instagram stories is where I do random things, like where I'm going each day and things like that. So it's more behind the scenes. But yeah, you can find me on any of those places.
And I just want to say, I see any technology usually has a good and a less good side. So normally I love when all my people are coming up there for me to see. I love it. Oh, what's they're doing? I love it when I get, because of my algorithms, I get a ton of book advertisements, and I love them because it's like, let's check this out. Unfortunately, sometimes I get carried away, and then my algorithms go a little wonky, and I have to watch a lot of puppy and sassy toddler videos to get it back. Laughing babies, the best way to clear it out. So I need to do that. It's a good world, and you can see a lot of that. It's just sometimes, we can all do our best to make it a little bit more hospitable, I think. Except for you that are listening, you're doing your best every day. I know this. Okay, that was just getting me out of trouble. So when it comes to truth, I just want to read this quote that you have. When we are giving death to falsity. That fairness and courage of the wolf is essential. When there are places that we fear to go, especially within ourselves, that needs the energy of the warrior or warrioress, the wolves can facilitate embodying this. Lupa is the mother of this stripping away of all that is no longer aligned or resonates, so that you can be who you are truly meant to be and embody your essential self of truth. And I think that world works for the world too. I mean, as we take away the untruths. Although I'm now on this entire conspiracy of the Christian church taking over Rome and continuing it. This is very interesting stuff, Rachel. So we got where we can find you, new books coming out. Anything else we need to know about?
We could do some more howling.
We could always howl. Well, I see we cover. I even had a question about caves because you put some of the sacred places of
Yeah.
Lupa in there. I thought, well, let's look into caves, but we did that going in and the shawl, that covering with. So that's the point. Simplicity. Even if you don't have a cave handy, which sometimes I don't. You just pull the hood, and it does. I mean, anybody who lives in Canada knows that when you pull that wooden hood up, you're out of circuit. You're out of the circuit of this. You're gone. You can't hear. You can't. That is your identity, and you can only see this far in front of us. So make your
Yeah.
cave, like Rachel does when she does these podcasts. She has her cave. She goes
I do, yeah.
Is there anything that we missed that you want to add?
I don't know. I don't think so. But I mean, I mean, the cave is there's something that I love to talk about. Like I call
Well,
it
we
the
can
cave of
talk
the
about the
sea
cave.
wolf. We'll go into that. I just love the analogy of the cave. Like I think it brings us full circle actually, because at the beginning I was talking about the redundancy and I went into the cave, and it's the place where there was an end and a beginning. So that's why I call the cave the tomb womb. So it's where something dies and something's reborn. So it's where you plant the seeds. You know, and whenever you go into that place, I call them dark nights of the soul, when we go into these places of fear or death or destruction or pivoting or ending, whatever it may be, it may be a big thing or a little thing. It might be a change of job, or it might be you lose a loved one. You've got this moment when you go down into the cave. There's two things to always remember when you're in that womb cave, is that Lupa is going with you, that you can hold on to her, that you never go into that cave alone, that she'll walk with you every single step, and spend the time in there, like be in it fully. Like if you go quickly, you're not going to go fully down to the deepest, darkest caverns. In those deepest, darkest caverns, you're going into deepest parts of you, getting to know yourself more, better, deeper. You're able to strip away more of those Shrek onion layers, going in there. And it may seem really scary and terrifying, but because she's there, she reminds that you are, one of her puppies. You are a wolf pup, therefore you have courage. You have that something that's going to keep you going, and that thing that's going to keep you going is kind of like your destiny, your purpose, your reason for coming back out again. So there's the other side to it. The second thing is you always come out. The cave is never a one-way thing. You always come back out of the cave. It's a journey, not a dead end. So don't stay there. It can actually get very comfy in the darkness. You can end up getting a bit stuck there, because you can end up fearing coming out more than you did actually going in. And so to remember that every single journey into the cave is just to lead you to coming back out again. And it's when you come back out that the light can then reveal all of those kind of new things that you added to yourself or was revealed, so you take off all those layers down there, and then you come back out into the light, and then you can see them and you do something with them then.
No, that's very important to mention, because as you've said, your or were, or you have introvert tendencies. I do as well. Too many people, let's just, it's not that you don't like people, it's just you need to have your pajama days as well. And it's too easy to go in there. You have to make yourself sometimes go out for that little bit because it will be hard at first. And especially if you're showing a new person with a new skin, to maintain that boundary of being that person. But if you don't do that, you never will, right? You have to have, that's
Yeah,
part of the courage. That's
yeah.
part.
And a lot of people, like, will come to me and go, oh, I really resonate with the archetype of lone wolf because I'm always alone and I feel alone. And I was like, but the important thing about the lone wolf is the lone wolf is going out to discover who they are. Once they've discovered who they are, they then create their own pack. You said that is a period of time. It's not an end point. It's not a finality. It's not like they're going to be lost in the woods on their own forever. So when a wolf leaves the pack, they're going off to create their own pack, but they have a journey before they do that. They find somewhere where they're going to be, and then they're going to go and find their partner. So it's that archetype of lone wolf is just a transition point. So we're not meant to be alone. We are meant to be part of a pack. And for the us that are introverts, that can be a little bit more difficult. And especially when the world can be so inauthentic, we kind of feel like maybe we don't resonate with a lot of places now. We're given so many options on the internet of where we could go and who we could be. It can be a bit confusing. You're feeling, I don't, in the past, perhaps there's only one place you want to fit in that you were seeing, which was your local village, and you become the crazy lady in the house. But now you're seeing like 50,000 villages. So you've got all this possibility, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. You're like, gosh, I don't fit into like 50 places now. Yeah, it's just
Well, it's
encouraging us
all
into
gotten
more
so,
refinement, isn't it?
yeah, it's gotten
It's
so
or more
specifically
authenticity.
labeled, right? We've over labeled everything. I think
Mm-hmm.
that to this point, and then we think that everybody has to know all of those labels in order to understand who we truly are, when our actions will just show who that is, right? So
Yeah.
so these things are said in hope. I, here at Fika, there is so much hope out there, and we can't lose that, because even when we're in the cave, there is that opening where light is coming in, and Rachel brings a lot of light through her writing and her videos, and and her patience with live streamers. And that's the point. We all just need to do the best that all the things, it's just amazing that all the things, as you've pointed out, and you read in the book, all of the things that would bring us happiness, that would bring us more joy, are considered either uncaring, well, you don't know what the problem is, or weak. Like, it's just this when this is not true. People, laughter is the best medicine, right? Always has been, always will be. And there are the warriors who, there's that warrior laugh that said, oh yeah, you're bringing it my way, just go for it. It's just been there, done that, know the rules. Kind of thing. And I think that's what Lupa brings to us. I'm actually proud of myself because my cat is called Luna, and I thought for sure I would spend this entire show making that mistake, but that was good. And it is Lupa. So thank you so much for having written this book and Wolf, and bringing it out now. I just think it's the perfect time for it. Perfect time for it. The perfect time for you to be out of your cave, Rachel. And please, well, in January I'll probably be hitting. You'll probably get a little ding, Vicky, after I get a chance to read Roman, the Pantheon, the
The
Romans.
Romans.
The Romans, because history is interesting when you look at it from a people's perspective. It's just biographies in general. I'm with you. People are the most interesting things in the world. So we need to take care of of the species. Take care. Thank you very much. And I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, lovely to have you. Always a pleasure. Bye-bye for now. Yes, a lovely time with Rachel. I don't know what's happening next week. We're just going with it, people. Thank you for all your nice comments. And until I see you again, may your coffee be hot and your story sweet. Thanks for listening.